Colin here with Lachey Batts, sister of Marvin, who, as you guys know, was executed by police. It was ruled a homicide recently, and so I've been here sort of covering this and trying to see what is going on here. And before we get into all that, I just wanted to open with sort of the thing that most people don't ask, or most news places don't ask and stuff like that, which is like, who was Marvin? Like, how was he as a person? Like, did he have things he enjoyed? Like,
yeah, Marvin was a great person. To experience him was to know him and to love him. He was a pure soul. He loved everybody. He never seen any wrong in anybody, which was almost kind of like the scary part, because like nobody was a bad person to him. Nobody, which is unfortunate that these officers killed them, because I'm like, if they just got to know him for just a second, even 30 seconds of their time, they would have realized, like, got to know him and not treated him as an inmate, which nobody should be treated like an inmate just because you're behind closed doors or behind those bars. He was a good person. We're missing him so much. His nephews miss him. I miss him. He was the life of the party. He enjoyed music. He enjoyed dancing. He enjoyed freestyling, which he could not do, but he thought he could. But he was just a good person, and we miss him every day. I miss him every day. Speaking for myself, I miss him tremendously. I'm missing a gap that nothing can fill that void for me, you know? And, you know, I will continue to fight for his justice, because I do feel like a little bit in Collin County they're trying to brush it under the rug. I do feel like that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you say you do want justice, but in this case, it's, you know, the most justice you can get. The real justice would have been him being treated correctly.
I mean, we'll never get justice, because justice is Marvin being here present. But the justice that we can get to follow that is the officers being held accountable, things being in place, reform, mental health funding, people who come out as responders before the police to diagnose a situation to see if the police need to be involved. Like, there's so much that needs to happen for justice to be served for Marvin. But right now, we're not there, and we're going to keep fighting until we get there, you know?
Yeah, and speaking of which, you know, that you speaking of bringing in mental health professionals and stuff is I feel like one of the key aspects of movements like defund the police and stuff, which is just reallocating resources to police don't need to respond to everything. And I'm sure if you talk to police officers, they don't like responding to every call for things they're not qualified for. But do you think if those types of programs were in place with mental health professionals, would Marvin still be with us today?
I think so. I truly believe so, because based off the video evidence that I've seen, they were not trained to deal with a mental health patient or suffering a mental health crisis. I mean, honestly, anybody that has common sense would have seen that he was suffering a mental health crisis. So.
Yeah, and it was two parts that film, because from what I understand, the police took him to a hospital first, and they cleared him for being put inside of the correctional facility in the meantime, which begs the question, because he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and stuff. So how do you even like fix something like that? Like, how did he get cleared too?
I mean, I don't know. Those are great questions, because I would love to know why that professional in the ER chose to clear him. Because from my understanding, it takes up to 24 to 72 hours to diagnose someone to be cleared to see if they're even sued for custody. It takes somebody, even if it wasn't a situation to be sued for custody, just to diagnose a situation to make sure they weren't suffering a mental health crisis. I know in California it is mandatory for 72 hours for them to be in there. Because if you're listening to a mental health crisis patient, which I don't know how that went, because we haven't seen that part of the footage yet, so I don't know how that went. I don't know how that questioning went. But you can't clear somebody in 3 hours of an ER visit, and I just know that he was in the ER for 3 hours, but I don't know how long he was talking to the doctor or anything. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know the questions that were asked, but I would love to know, how does that process work for somebody who the police officers observed could potentially be suffering a mental health crisis, how does that look in the ER for you? Like, what are the precautions for you to issue them to be sued for custody? Because he wasn't sued for custody. We know he wasn't sued for custody because we know that he's been diagnosed with mental illness. So if the police seen that, we know he was going through a mental health crisis. So what made you feel like he was sued for custody? Or were you listening to him? Because you don't listen to a patient who's suffering mental health crisis. Like, who's the professional here? The patient or you? I really just feel like that wasn't diagnosed and handled in the way that it should have been. Because if it was, it started with that hospital and that call. If they would have did the right thing and went through the steps they needed to, Marvin would still be here with us. We would have been picking him up from a behavioral hospital instead of picking out a casket 2 months ago.
Yeah, and you had mentioned the footage you had and hadn't seen. As of right now, that hasn't been released to the public either, let alone all of it shown to you, it sounds like. Do you think that this is a situation of them just sort of hoping that this continues on and gets swept under the rug? Or do you think there's an honest judicial process of why that is?
I don't know. I can't say because I don't know. Because I feel like only solely based off of Jim Skinner's comments prior to firing his former employees, he's definitely said that these officers violated well-established policies and procedures. So if they didn't do that, then they would have never been fired, you know? So in my opinion, I feel like they want to like get it brushed under the rug, but will it get brushed under the rug? I don't think so, because we're going to continue to fight and hope that does not happen. But if these officers established, well, not if they did, go against all policies and procedures, which led up to their resignation from their job, for the sheriff firing them. If they didn't do that, then then they didn't do anything wrong, but they did, so they did get fired. So why aren't they being held accountable for their actions? So that's why I feel like it could possibly, they want it to be swept under the rug, because why are they not being held accountable for their actions? Marvin's murder has been ruled as a homicide. This shouldn't even be a discussion anymore. Regardless if the public has seen it or not, our family has seen it, the sheriff has seen it, they've seen it, they were there. And we're still here 64 days later with no answers, no arrest. The public, along with the family, the public, they have the right to see what happened too. This is their county. This is the county they pay taxes in. They live here. They have children that live here. Everybody deserves to see what happened to Marvin. The family have seen it. The county deserves to see it as well.
Yeah, as you mentioned, like, even officially up until this point, they still haven't even released the names of the officers officially. Usually, I feel like at this point, you get the names of people who are suspects and stuff in a homicide investigation, which, like you mentioned, this is officially ruled a homicide. Yet it's not being, I feel like, treated or verbally treated as such as well by some of the officials. And you had also mentioned about getting the word out and how you make sure that this doesn't die out. You guys, your family and friends and stuff, seem to be working really hard to make sure that the public awareness keeps this in.
Yeah.
I saw that yesterday with a protest that was happening during a thunderstorm still, and people were going and talking to people around the community about it. Have you seen a positive local response to this, or is it you're still getting a lot of pushback here?
For the most part, it's been positive, considering that we've been peaceful. There was only one incident where words got twisted from elected officials, which is embarrassing on their part, because they didn't take the time out to not only go into depth to figure out what happened, but they failed to even talk about Marvin's murder for something that happened in their county, in their states, King Paxton and Chris Hill. Chris Hill, he's a Collin County commissioner judge, and he's not one to mention the in custody death that's happened in his county, but he wants to talk about a protest that was held in Plano. Ken Paxton, his state in Texas, wants to talk about a protest, but has yet to mention the in-custody death that has happened in his state.
Yeah, and since you brought it up, Chris Hall, for you guys who might not be aware, put out a statement. And it looks like, from what I understand, he, up until this point, he hasn't put out any statement regarding Marvin or any of the protests, which have been going on for this full 64 days with no incidents. And the sole incident was 7 minutes of blocked traffic. And from what I understand, the reason it was up to 7 minutes is because someone outside the protest caused an altercation with it there, which held it up and caused that.
Yeah, so the whole 7 minutes wasn't the 7 minutes of us holding up traffic. The whole 7 minutes was, the aggressor, which was not our Justice for Marvin crowd, was the aggressor coming out of his car that was upset that he was being held up from his day. I mean, we're held up for life. We don't have Marvin. So I'm sorry that, you were held up for just a little bit of your time to go to Target or Lowe's or proceed with your day. But we're suffering and we're hurting. And we're not just hurting as a family, we're hurting as a community. Because there are people that stand with us and there are people that stand behind us. And we are going to continue to protest and get Marvin's story out and get the word out. And that mini altercation doesn't stop anything. And I appreciate the people that do stand with us because nobody became aggressive to him during all his aggression. But it boggles my mind because I believe if there was a black man as tall as he was and as big as he was, if he would have confronted the crown, I think that story would have ended a lot different. And we all know that.
Exactly. And not only that, but the aggressor, I would argue, would be considered a higher priority as far as like what you guys were doing. They had talked about during the public comments today of blocking traffic is simply a misdemeanor. Someone assaulting would be much higher than that, yet they feel the need to put out statements for the misdemeanor but not a statement on 8 police officers being fired and connected to the murder of someone inside of
the homicide yes, of Marvin Scott III. So, I mean, it really is, for me, if I was an elected official sitting in their seats, I would feel embarrassed to not have even talked about that, but confronting protesters for standing, behind Marvin Scott III and their family, and me being the sister, it's just like, it's just disgusting because, you're mad is just almost, it's just like you're mad is just a little mad. Like if you're mad about the wrong thing, if you're more mad about us blocking traffic than somebody that was brutally terrorized, tortured, and murdered to death, suffering in a mental health crisis, than us blocking traffic. I'm sorry that 7 minutes of your day were so messed up. You probably spent more than 7 minutes of that on Twitter or any social media site than what you said in the traffic that held up your day.
Yeah, and in the public comments, I would assume that all those people who had shown up today complaining about that 7 minutes, which I'm sure none of them were actually in that traffic.
Of course.
None of them were there in those public comments for that murder of Marvin Scott. They're more concerned about a 7-minute inconvenience than a murder by a murder by public officials.
The second thing is I believe in free flow of traffic. So when that peaceful protest, if you had 50 peaceful protests and one more got out into traffic, and 7 minutes, okay, 7 minutes, the first minute is against the law.
Part of it is this sort of rhetoric from these elected officials. I had Ken Paxton here, who's a Texas attorney, who compared these peaceful protests to a mob. Like we said, Chris Hill called the peaceful protests schoolyard bullies, lawlessness, and just trying to get attention and make a profit, though I'm not sure how that would work exactly. And during all of this, there's been no major media coverage, it feels like, at least as of yet. Does it feel, especially on the heels of what feels like mild victories such as like George Floyd and stuff like that, do you think that was it and the media is moving on, or do you think what do you think is happening here?
I don't know what's happening. I honestly don't care what's happening. I don't care about the media attention. I don't care about any of that. I care that people in Texas, not just even Collin County or just not even Texas, the world, people know about Marvin's story, that it doesn't get brushed under the rug. Or what did he say? We're here for amusement is what his words were?
Yeah, one of them, yeah.
Amusement is one of his words, but nothing's funny about this. This isn't amusing to us by any means. I lost my brother. My mother lost her son. I'm a mother of 2 sons. My mother is so strong because I don't know what I would do if I lost my son. I lost my brother. I'm sorry. I lost my brother. So nothing about this is amusing. It's hurtful. For him to say those comments should be embarrassing to him because, maybe it's amusing to him. Or maybe he finds that for attention because we're not looking for attention and we are raising awareness. People need to be informed about what's happening in their own backyard. We live in Collin County. There's people, we go out to these protests, they still don't know what happened to Marvin. They're just finding out about this. Nobody knows about this. A lot of people don't know about this. So yeah, that's why it does feel like it's getting brushed under the rug. It does some days feel like it's getting brushed under the rug. And some days I'm like, why are we even doing this? Nothing's happening, but I know that we can't let up, and I know that we have to keep fighting for justice for Marvin because Marvin's life matters. Anybody after him life is going to matter. Everybody's lives matter. And we can't let this get brushed under the rug. Collin County is so scared about this getting, what he compared to Portland or whatever. Yeah. All our protests, in my eyes, have been peaceful. We have not rioted. We have not looted. We walked through Stonebriar Mall. Ain't nobody touched a thing. We want to be heard. We need people to know Marvin's story because Collin County is doing their best to not let it be heard, you know?
When you mentioned everyone in Collin County, if you don't live in Collin County, odds are this is something that'll happen or has happened in your county. Like, if this gets swept up or doesn't keep the awareness up, then this is just going to keep happening, not just here.
Exactly, and it will get swept under the rug. So if they are going to try to sweep it under the rug, we're going to do our best as a community and everybody that stands behind me and our family to make sure that it doesn't, and to continue to raise awareness. That's why every Sunday we do a protest. And we're going to make sure that Marvin's name stays alive and people are aware of what happened. We are going to be out. We're going to be out here. That's our goal. Our goal isn't for amusement, as Chris Hill says. How ignorant. But as he says, this isn't for amusement or for our pleasure or for social media gain or profit or attention. We're not profiting anything. At all. We're not profiting anything. Oh my God. Anyways, we're here to raise awareness for Marvin's name, to get the word out, to let people know his story. And knowing his story is a part of the reform. We don't have that mental health funding. They spend a ample amount of money on getting freaking drones and police cars. And we don't have an appointed official for mental health funding in Collin County. That's a problem.
And is there anything that people, both in and outside of Collin County, can do to obviously help spread awareness and things like that on the situation? So
we do have a Facebook page called the Official Justice for Marvin Facebook page, where we update all of our information. Really, more so we're trying to raise awareness about his story and everything. I've never done this before. This is just something you just don't want to be a part of, unfortunately. So I'm just trying to fight for my brother's justice. All I do ask people all the time for is just pray. Just pray and get the story out. Get the word out. Let people know what's happening, what's going on in Collin County. Don't let it get swept up under the rug. We need people. We need those brains, those ideas, the people that want to march with us, stand with us. We need the extra support to get this word out, to establish change. We as a people have so much more power than those elected officials that sit up there, because if everybody's registered to vote, if everybody comes together as a community, there's so much change. The power of the people don't stop. The power of the people is so big. If we get all these people involved in spreading awareness, things will change. I believe that things will change.
Absolutely, and I'll have the links for what you just mentioned in the video below or description below. But Is there any way, or is there anything that people can do who want to help you and your family directly? I don't know if you guys have anything going on, like a GoFundMe or anything. But...
There is. We have a link tree. I'll give you the link tree information for that. The link tree tells Marvin's story and tells about the upcoming events. It does have the GoFundMe account on there. What else does it have on there? The Commissioner's Court meetings, of which are every Monday at 1:30. And we also have a Zoom meeting for people who aren't in Texas. They can tap in to just kind of figure out everything that's going on with our community out here, with Marvin's story, all that. And it's always at 8 p.m. every Monday. I don't think this is something that's just going to be like, okay, we got justice, now we're done. I think this will be an ongoing thing. I know it will be an ongoing thing because I'll keep it going. Because unfortunately, we live in a world where Marvin won't be the last name. He wasn't the last name. There were names that came after him, like Micaiah Bryant and Adam Toledo, and so many. It's always so many names, so many names. So, we're out here. We won't let up. We want justice. We want to seek justice. We won't stop until we get justice, and we just won't stop until there's reform in the system. Another mother, sister, brother won't have to bury their sister or brother in the ground of all these black and brown bodies, because it's unfair.
Is there any last things you want to say?
No.
Yeah. Thank you very much for taking your time to help get this story out there, because it is it's very, when I first came across it, it was very hard to even read about this injustice that happened, and especially the initial cause of it, which is,
of course,
nothing, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
So I will keep on this story. I'll be coming out here again later, so definitely thank you for coming here today.